a surprise attack on the Clark Air Base in Pampanga on December 8, 1941, just 10 hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Aerial bombardment was followed by landings of ground troops on Luzon. The defending Philippine and United States troops were under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. Under the pressure of superior numbers, the defending forces withdrew to the Bataan Peninsula and to the island of Corridor at the entrance to Manila Bay. On January 2, 1942, General MacArthur declared the capital city, Manila, an open city to prevent its destruction. The Philippine defense continued until the final surrender of United States Philippine forces on the Bataan Peninsula in April 1942 and on Corridor in May of the same year. Most of the 80,000 prisoners of war captured by the Japanese at Bataan were forced to undertake the infamous Bataan Death March to a prison camp 105 kilometers to the north. It is estimated that about 10,000 Filipinos and 1,200 Americans died before reaching their destination. President Quezon and Osmeña had accompanied the troops to Corregidor and later left for the United States, where they set up a government in exile. MacArthur was ordered to Australia, where he started a plan for a return to the Philippines. The Japanese military authorities immediately began organizing a new government structure in the Philippines and established the Philippine Executive Commission. They initially organized a Council of State, through which they directed civil affairs until October 1943, when they declared the Philippines an independent republic. The Japanese-sponsored republic headed by the President Jose P. Laurel proved to be unpopular. Japanese occupation of the Philippines was opposed by large-scale underground and guerrilla activity. The Philippine Army, as well as remnants of the U.S. Army Forces Far East, continued to fight the Japanese in guerrilla war and was considered an auxiliary unit of the United States Army. Their effectiveness was such that by the end of the war, Japan controlled only 12 of the 48 provinces. One element of resistance in the central Luzon area was furnished by the Hukbalahap, which armed some 30,000 people and extended their control over much of Luzon. The occupation of the Philippines by Japan ended the war's conclusion. The American Army had been fighting the Philippines campaign since October 1944, when MacArthur's 6th United States Army landed on Leyte. Landings in other parts of the country had followed, and the allies with the Philippine Commonwealth troops stormed Manila. However, fighting continued until Japan's formal surrender on September 2, 1945. The Philippines suffered a great loss of life and tremendous physical destruction, especially during the Battle of Manila. An estimated 1 million Filipinos had been killed, a large portion during the final months of the war, and Manila had been extensively damaged. The Philippine literature was interrupted in its development when the Philippines was conquered by the foreign country Japan. The Philippine literature in English came to a halt. Except for the Tribune and the Philippine Review, almost all newspapers in English were stopped by the Japanese. A lot of educated Filipinos either migrated to America or stayed in the Philippines, but were not able to write for fear that they might be punished by the Japanese. During this period, Tagalog as a medium for writing had a resurgence, for the Japanese preferred Tagalog over English. This had an advantageous effect on Filipino literature, which experienced renewed attention because writers in English turned to writing in Filipino. There was a brief flirtation with writing Tagalog during the Japanese occupation, as Japanese forces were suspicious that Philippine spies would use English for using secret messages to U.S. forces. In other words, Filipino literature was given a break during this period. Many wrote plays, poems, short stories, and etc. The topics and themes were often about life in the provinces.